achieved.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're breaking down the upcoming UFC 164 event, which will take place on August 31st. It's the midway mark of 3 shows in basically a week. Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday. The main event will feature Benson Henderson defending his lightweight title against Anthony Pettis, the man that defeated him in the final WEC bout ever in a great fight featuring the Showtime kick that arguably won him the match. That'll be our main event. 5 great fights. My prelim predictions will be all available at Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. At the time of taping this, UFC Fight Night 27 has not happened yet. I'm trying to get as far ahead of the game as I possibly can, so that event has not happened. It will mark the end of the Kamikaze Overdrive Prediction Tournament 3rd round. So as of this event, we'll be kicking off the semifinals. So the 32 competitors we had when we started the tournament will be down to the final 4. So make sure you check out those predictions. The bet packs will be still going strong, available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, along with the public pick section. Make sure you check that out. Lots from me. 5 great fights. Let's get into the first matchup of the night. We start things off in the UFC's featherweight division, a very exciting matchup as the number 10 ranked Erik New Breed Koch, with a record of 13-2-0, battles the number 6 ranked Dustin the Diamond Poirier, 13-3-0. Koch had his 4-fight winning streak snapped in his last appearance, while Poirier is coming off a loss against Camus and has actually dropped 2 of his last 3, but both against top contenders. Now, recently, they both had a common opponent. They both defeated Jonathan Brookins. Poirier took him out with a first-round Darce submission, and Erik Koch decisioned him in a interesting matchup, to say the least. Poirier's been certainly more active since 2011 and joining the UFC with 7 fights to Koch's 3, and certainly he's far more comfortable as far as what he expects inside the cage. Dustin's a BJJ brown belt, 1.48 takedowns at a 32% completion rate, 6 wins by submission and 3 inside the UFC, so very capable on the ground. And he's very solid. He's very solid when he can get on top. When he really likes that Darce choke, he has some pretty good ground and pound, but he doesn't put up huge takedown numbers. His best numbers to date in his Zuffa career, 5 takedowns against Jason Young, but he went 2 for 9 against Cub Swanson, and 0 for 4 against Korean Zombie in fights that he really could have used those ground success. Koch, on the other hand, 7 wins by submission, impressive takedown defense, 81%. He shut down 6 of Ricardo Lamas' 8 attempts, and Brookins went 1 for 20 trying to take him on the down, so that's very strong takedown defense. But at the same time, I say that with a big question mark. He's had trouble keeping opponents from backing him into the cage and controlling him there. Brookins had a ton of success backing him up, and Lamas did as well in that, basically round and a half of action they went through. Like I said, he showed good takedown defense against Lamas. He got up. When he did get taken down, he got up very quickly. Good balance, uses a wide stance and prep for takedowns. He was hesitating a little bit with his strikes. Duke Rufus in his corner was telling him, let him go, let him go. Now, one thing, though, Lamas took advantage of a Koch slip, and that's something to take into consideration here. In the second round, when Lamas got on top, it was because Koch slipped and gave him that opportunity, and Lamas took advantage of it and finished it with a ground and pound, landing some big shots, and it makes me question, if Koch does get put on his back, how effective is he at defending those shots, because Lamas put him away fairly easily from that position. Now, on the feet, Koch is a Duke Rufus-trained fighter he designs Muay Thai for MMA, which is very impressive. He has 3 wins by knockout, including stopping Francisco Rivera in his final WEC appearance and Rafael Sunzo in his UFC debut. He's a Taekwondo black belt, so heavy kicking arsenal. He works with Anthony Pettis, so that's not too shocking. He has nice, long, sharp punches. Not a ton of footwork. He sits a little bit still for my liking, but still very effective. Now, as far as striking is concerned, Poirier has the advantage as far as strikes landed per minute, 4.14 versus 2.21. But turn things around, strikes absorbed per minute. Koch does a much better job, limiting his opponents to only 1.79 strikes. Poirier takes a lot of damage at 3.22, and that's going to add up against a very big, hard-hitting fighter like Erik Koch. Now, Poirier, he uses a little more head movement, footwork, and angles, which I like. He has a tendency to cover up when he's under attack and just absorb the shots instead of trying to move away, and that's a bad thing if his opponent can start overwhelming him. He did get hurt by Jonathan Brookins, who's not a very strong striker, and he can get tagged and overwhelmed on the feet. He relies on his grappling to counter if losing the striking battles. We saw that against Brookins, Max Holloway, and Jason Young. Koch's defense on his back is a big question mark, but he showed good takedown defense in a lot of his fights, and he's very strong. He's a very big featherweight. And Poirier has had trouble getting fights to the ground when he needed them. He hasn't always been able to get fighters on their back, especially higher ranked and better quality fighters. As I said, Koch's a big featherweight. He hits very hard. Poirier's striking defense is a bit questionable, and he could struggle with the takedowns, which means he's going to take a lot of damage on the feet. Poirier's a front runner, not nearly as effective when he's not dominating a fight. He's 2-2 in decisions overall. I think Erik Koch will do enough. So my prediction is Erik Koch to defeat Dustin Poirier by decision. Up next, 32-9-0, Big Ben Rothwell meets 12-6-0 with 1 no contest. Brandon the Truth Vera in a heavyweight matchup. Yes, Vera returning to the 265ers. Rothwell's alternated wins and losses, and coming off a loss over Gabriel Gonzaga, while Vera defeated by Shogun Hu in his last appearance back in August of 2012. Now, first things first, Rothwell was cleared for TRTU, so we'll see if that helps his performance in this fight. It's helped a lot of other guys. We'll see if that works for Big Ben. Now, Vera, he's returning to heavyweight for the first time since back-to-back losses in 2008 and late 2007 against Tim Sylvia and Fabricio Verdum. Another thing as well, Vera's been out for over a year, so a little bit of ring rust a possibility for the veteran fighter. Physically, Rothwell, we see this a lot in the heavyweight division, 1 inch of height and 2 inches of reach on Vera, but more importantly, he's going to have 25 to 35 pounds of weight, poundage on Vera, which could show up, and Vera's had trouble with bigger men in the past. Vera really hasn't looked good since 2009. He's been very inconsistent overall. He's had some fights we look at, but he's claiming blank slate again, back to 0-0, but he said that before. Rothwell, on the other hand, has been dealing with some injuries. He struggled against Gabe Gonzaga and Mark Hunt, was in trouble against Brendan Schaub until the KO in that fight. So certainly he hasn't looked like a barn burner either. Both fighters are kickboxing based. Rothwell with 18 knockouts, Vera with 7, but of course Rothwell's fought a number of times more than Brandon. Strikes landed per minute, Vera with a slight edge at 3.2 versus 2.39. Strikes absorbed per minute, also favoring Brandon at 2.67 to 3.21. So if he can keep this fight going go to the judges and those numbers hold true, that'll be big for Brandon. Now, Vera, nice variety of kicks. Rothwell, on the other hand, has very good power in his hands. He will throw some kicks as well, but not on the level of Vera with his Muay Thai. Brandon should benefit from the added speed advantage of moving back to heavyweight. I think that was part of his problem at light heavyweight, was that the guys were as fast or faster than him. Where at heavyweight, he's a little bit quicker, and that should help him out. Rothwell needs to lean on Vera in this fight, use his size, and keep him from attacking at distance, really close that distance, and beat him up in close. Vera works very well in the clinch, but again, he should focus on using his range striking and his speed and his movement. Big Ben's cardio and overall physical durability has not been great of late. Again, the TRT could play a role there, but I don't know. He just seems to break down in fights. 41 fight career is what he's dealing with. This will be a 42nd pro fight, and that could be costing him some and definitely taking a toll on his body, fighting at heavyweight all of his career. Rothwell has been knocked out 4 times, Vera 3, so certainly we could see a knockout in this fight. Both fighters have been very inconsistent, and both are desperate for a win as they could see the door with another loss here. For me, Vera looked much more focused in his last fight and he prepared better for his matchup with the Shogun, and I think he sees this as his last chance. He's going back to heavyweight and restarting his career. This is his last opportunity. I think Vera should be able to use his kicks, really chop Ben down, and tax his questionable cardio. Beat him up, make Ben chase him, and I think he'll take a lot out of him. He needs to watch taking that big shot or getting caught along the cage. A knockout is a significant possibility, both these guys, but I see Brandon Vera defeating Ben Rothwell. I'll take Vera by decision. We are moving right along. We move now to the UFC's featherweight division as the number 1 ranked featherweight, the guy ranked just below the champion, Chad Money Mendes, 14-1-0, battles former lightweight and now featherweight contender number 9 ranked Clay the Carpenter Guida, 30-10-0. Mendes has won 3 in a row since dropping his title fight against Aldo, while Guida has picked up, after losing a couple fights at lightweight, debuted with a controversial victory over Hatsu Hioki in his featherweight debut. Now, Mendes has said arguably the second best featherweight on the planet, only lost to Aldo, and no one else has really been that close to holding staying with Mendes in a fight. Mendes is trying to get back to the title fight, and that's a huge pressure-filled atmosphere for him. Guida, on the other hand, he's been close a couple times getting a shot at lightweight, but he's never won the big one, and this again is another one of those big fights for Guida. Now, Guida made his featherweight debut last fight. Wasn't a great performance, a lot of lay and pray versus by Hioki, but he should be a little bit more comfortable to fight at 145 here. He has a slight size advantage, which is very rare for a fighter like him, but Mendes is a beast and physically a very strong individual. Now, both guys are wrestling-based. Mendes is a former NCAA Division I All-American, 4.72 takedowns at 57%. Those are impressive numbers. Even more impressive, 100% takedown defense. So big numbers offensively and defensively for Mendes. Guida, 3.8 takedowns, also very impressive. 40% completion rate, 71% takedown defense. So not quite as good as Mendes, but still very strong. But he has been taken out on multiple occasions, but again, that was at lightweight against bigger men. Guida, he's known for his cardio and his pressure, but he hasn't been nearly as aggressive of late and not nearly as offensive as he used to be, which is a huge problem and really starting to wear on some people when they watch him fight. He used a lot of movement to take opponents off balance and look for takedowns. For Mendes, he has really no experience fighting off his back, and that could be a huge issue if he gets put there with any regularity. For Chad, he's got a strong power double, very good with his takedowns, has used top position and ground and pound to grind out many wins before, and that's somebody taking into consideration. Guida does have the submission edge, 15 wins compared to only 2 for Chad, but Guida's also been tapped out 6 times, so far from invincible on the mat if it does go there. On the feet, Mendes' striking is improving significantly. He's been working with Dwayne Ludwig since he signed on as a coach at Alpha Male. 3 straight wins by knockout, all on the feet, so very impressive. He did take out 2 lower-level guys in Yatsi Meza and Cody McKenzie, but the win over Elkins stopping him, that was Elkins is tough, and that was impressive. A good win for Mendes on the feet. Guida, he's not overly technical. He's a brawler, but again, and he likes to get in guys' faces. That's the old Guida. He seems to be playing a little more safe now, and but another thing too, he gets hit more than he hits, and that hurts when you're fighting against guys who are big and strong and can hit like a Mack truck like Chad Mendes can. Strikes landed per minute versus absorbed for Mendes, very impressive. He hits 2.36 times. He hits opponents 2.36 times a minute, where his opponents only land 1.18 strikes. A lot of that, again, has to do with his top control and his wrestling, but still impressive numbers when you can limit your opponents to just over 1 strike per minute. Guida's never been KO'd. He has a good chin, but he has been hurt. We saw Florian drop him, and we saw Henderson land a couple good shots that seemed to daze him as well. Mendes, just the one time again against Jose Aldo, which is no shame in that. Guida's best areas, his wrestling, his top control, and his ground and pound. That's Mendes' best areas. And again, Guida did not look that good against Hyoki, and I think he's going to struggle to get Mendes on his back. Guida's cardio and movement won't be enough to keep Mendes off of him, and I've got Chad Mendes defeating Clay Guida. I think he does it by TKO. We move now to our co-main event of the night. It's in the UFC heavyweight division. It features 2 former champions as the number 6 ranked Frank Mir, 16-7-0, battles the number 10 ranked Josh Barnett, 32-6-0. Mir's lost 2 in a row against 2 of the best 3 heavyweights in the world, in Daniel Cormier and Junior Dos Santos, while Barnett's coming off a win in his final Strikeforce appearance. Prior to that, he lost to Daniel Cormier in the Strikeforce heavyweight Grand Prix tournament finals. Now, this actually says Battle of the Champions. Barnett held the title until he was stripped back in the day for PEDs, and Mir won the vacated strap. So, very interesting matchup here as far as that history is concerned. Now, Barnett is in the title hunt with a win, regardless of what happens. For me, Frank Mir certainly is capable of getting back in it, but he needs Kane to retain the title against Junior Dos Santos because Mir has not faced Kane yet, and he's a recognizable name that could get a shot. 8 months off for Barnett, and the UFC returns. So a lot of pressure, a little bit of ring rust maybe for the veteran, but he is a veteran, as I said, and he should be able to deal with it. Physically very similar. Mir's going to have maybe 10 to 15 pounds on Barnett and 1 inch of reach. Height and age are almost identical. Mir's a black belt in karate and a BJJ black belt. He's 9-0 in fights ended by submission, tapping out guys like Big Nog, Brock Lesnar, and Czech Congo, which is very impressive. He averages 2.42 takedowns at roughly 46%, so not bad numbers. 6 takedowns against Roy Nelson was his UFC best. Other than that, not huge numbers as far as that's concerned. 2.55 submissions per 15 minutes. That's very impressive. He arguably has the best guard in the heavyweight division, or at least best submission fighter in the heavyweight division. Takedown defense, 55%. He's never been taken down more than once in a fight because he invites it, and guys know how tough he is to deal with on the mat. Barnett, he is also a BJJ black belt, but he's a catch wrestling expert. 2009 no-gi jiu-jitsu gold medalist at 97 kilograms, so he can hold his own on the ground, and we're well aware of that. 19-1 in fights ended by submission. Sergey Haratonov, Brett Rogers, Alexander Emelianenko, all the guys that tapped him. That lone loss was a submission to Mirko Krokop where Barnett, tapped the punches. So certainly, very capable on the mat. He averages 1.31 takedowns at 59%. Really, 2 takedowns or less in his last 5 wins, which were all on the mat. He doesn't need many opportunities to put an opponent on the ground to finish them, and that's 4 submissions, I think 1 TKO on the ground. So very good when it does go to the ground. He does a really good job of advancing his position mid-takedown. He'll float over into side position. He uses a lot of suplexes, body locks, throws. He's just very strong. 3 straight side choke victories, as he likes to call them, and he's got a very good formula. Takedown, side control, mount, soften up with strikes, and lock in that choke, which is very impressive when he can do it. Only recent loss was against Daniel Cormier. He went 0-1 on takedowns. Cormier, an Olympic-level wrestler. Cormier went 4-7, so it really shut down Barnett's takedown game. Now, Mir's dangerous off his back. Josh Barnett's brutal on top, so it should be interesting to see how that plays out, if it at all happens. Brock Lesnar was able to shut down Frank Mir's guard game with a strong top game and ground and pound. I'm not saying Barnett and Lesnar in the same category, but still it has been done. Striking, Mir's improving. He has that karate-style striking, 3 wins by knockout, Mirko Krokop and Big Nog, 2 of his big wins, but his chin is the major issue. 6 losses by KO. As far as I'm concerned, for heavyweight, his chin is gone. Junior Dos Santos stopped him. Shane Carwin, Brock Lesnar, even Brandon Vera stopped him back in the day. He lands 2.34 strikes per minute each. Actually, both guys do, so right on the same level of striking output. Barnett, though, a huge advantage in strikes absorbed per minute at 1.63 to 3.84, and again, that's where Mir takes that damage and eventually breaks down. 60% striking D for Barnett versus only 39% for Mir, so again, Barnett does a nice job of limiting what his opponents are able to do. Barnett has decent striking, 8 wins by knockout. He did KO Pedro Hizo on the feet, but most of his KOs are from top position, or TKOs. Mir has to avoid getting tagged on the feet or from the ground and pound position on top. He can't spend a lot of time on his feet either. He can't spend a lot of time on his back in this fight, or because he'll be considered losing the fight unless he pulls off a submission, which will be tough against the very top savvy Josh Barnett. Now, Barnett can win with strikes or win with top position. He should have the skills to defend Mir's takedown attempts or submissions from the bottom, and I actually think Barnett will find a big shot to get through, so my prediction is Josh Barnett to defeat Frank Mir by TKO. Finally, the main event a lot of people have been waiting for, a rematch as the lightweight champion of the UFC, Benson Henderson, 18-2-0, battles the number 2 ranked Anthony Showtime Pettis, 16-2-0. Remember, TJ Grant, the Canadian fighter, was supposed to get the shot pulled out due to a concussion. Now, Pettis has won 3 in a row. He debuted with a loss against Clay Guida after taking the WEC title from Ben Henderson, has won 3 in a row since that loss. Benson Henderson losing that fight to Anthony Pettis has ripped off 7 consecutive fights and against high-level competition, to say the least. Now, for looking back at the original fight, this is the first they fought 3 years ago. It was a very back-and-forth matchup. If you haven't seen it, make sure you go watch it. Arguably, won in the 5th round with that Showtime kick from Pettis. A lot of people are saying it was still tied until that kick landed. Henderson, though, 7-0 since that loss, and he's been a man on a mission winning the UFC title. As I say, Pettis has won 3 of 4. And struggled with that Guida fight, but really has got things going since then. Statistically, in that original fight, Pettis outlanded Benson 130-97. He had huge rounds, though, in rounds 3 and 5 with 106 strikes between the two. Other than that, he didn't put up a lot in the other 3 rounds. Henderson, on the other hand, a little more consistent. He was around 20 in each round, except for in the 5th round, where he only landed 5 significant punches, and strikes, and that was about all he put up there. Takedowns in the fight, Pettis went 2 for 2. Henderson went 3 for 10. Sub attempts, Pettis with a slight edge at 4 attempts to 2. So very even, very back and forth matchup. Pettis is a 3rd degree Taekwondo black belt and a BJJ purple belt, so he knows what he's doing. Henderson, on the other hand, Taekwondo black belt, BJJ black belt, and an NAIA All-American wrestler. Pettis has had a lot of success when he was forcing Henderson backwards in that fight, and I expect him to come out and try to do the same thing as well. He has a very strong kicking arsenal, Duke Rufus-trained fighter, very unorthodox, far more diverse striker than the champion. Strikes absorbed for a minute, a slight edge at 1.41 to 1.56 for Pettis. Henderson, he's an active striker. He has a lot of kicks, decent hands. Strikes landed per minute is where he has the advantage at 2.9 to 2.02. Now, Pettis has the power edge on the feet. 7 knockouts. We saw him use the head kick to take out Joe Lozon, and he took out Danny Castillo in WEC, and a body kick to floor Donald Cerrone. Henderson only 2 knockouts, but we did see him hurt Nate Diaz several times with strikes. His best offense is his kicking game, but it's still not nearly on the level of Pettis. Henderson's strong ground and pound. We saw him bust up Jim Miller, Clay Guida, and most recently Nate Diaz from that position. He has takedowns at 2.83 at 48%, so pretty respectable numbers. He landed 8 against Diaz, 7 against Miller, but he lost the takedown battle against Frankie Edgar over the 2 fights, 7-1, and he went 0 for 4 against Gilbert Melendez, so he's far from invincible when it comes to looking for takedowns. He's very heavy on top, strong ground and pound, as I said, active, constantly looking to advance his position, good submissions, really likes that guillotine, excellent submission defense, and 8 wins by sub overall. Pettis, 65% takedown defense, but Guida did go 5 for 8 and smothered him, and Jeremy Stephens also had some success, but he's been improving since those fights. He's working on his wrestling, training with a guy like Ben Askren at Rufus Sport, which is quite impressive and a good guy to work with. He did score 6 takedowns against Jeremy Stephens, so we could see him look for some offensive wrestling in this fight. Henderson's 9-1 in decisions overall, which is something to take into consideration. Pettis, 3-2. So certainly if Henderson goes the distance, he has an edge, but that one was a loss to Pettis. Henderson has become more of a point fighter as far as I'm concerned. He's had some close decisions, splits against Melendez and Edgar, where it was too tight. He left it up to the judges. For Pettis, he's more capable of finishing in this fight than Henderson is, and he's a more diverse and aggressive striker. He throws a lot more at his opponents. I think that'll weigh well with the judges. Henderson really needs to work on his wrestling and get Pettis to the mat and control him there. Pettis has shown the skills to defend, and again, his striking arsenal is so hard to navigate through. I call him a little bit of an upset and a new champion. My prediction is Anthony Pettis to defeat Ben Henderson by entertaining decision. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 164. UFC Fight Night 27 has not taken place yet, so I have nothing to report there. And we have UFC Fight Night 28 right around the corner, so I got to get hammering those prelim predictions out. Please check out Kamikaze Overdrive for all of your UFC prediction needs for this event and every other UFC event. We are the #1 source on the internet. I put out put in as much work as I possibly can. Bet packs are also available for $10. The public picks will be there. Kamikaze Overdrive Prediction Tournament semifinals will be now set as of this video. Best of luck to those competitors. As always, thank you very much for watching and listening in to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions.